So Kevin O'Connor at The Ringer said that the Bucks and the Pacers have discussed Oladipo trades. It honestly was just a blurb in an article he had about Daryl Morey and the Sixers, but it's in there nonetheless. So I think there's something to talk about here between whether this could happen or whether this just shows that the Bucks are willing to roll the dice a little bit with some sort of a move rather than play it safe this offseason. They've got some tradable stuff, of course. The most obvious move for the Bucks for Oladipo is Bledsoe, DiVincenzo, and the Pacers' 24th pick. But based on everything I'm hearing for Oladipo, the Bucks might look at that as too much. Now, some people would say that Bledsoe's not an asset. I mean, you could be right, because his postseasons have not been good. All three of them for the Bucks have been a disappointment, for him specifically, and the team in general, I guess you could say. But regular season-wise, he's been good, and the Pacers could view him as a nice piece at point guard, and, Brogdon plays the 2, and it just all kind of makes sense. And then DiVincenzo and the pick would just be nice, complementary pieces of the move. I've seen some suggest Ilyasova would be moving. I wouldn't view Ilyasova as much of anything if I was the Pacers. But yeah, this is pretty much the only way it could happen. I don't think the Bucks would want to move Brook Lopez, and there's no way the Pacers would move Oladipo for George Hill and Ilyasova, even if you threw DiVincenzo in the move. So I feel like this just further shows how awkward Oladipo's situation is right now, because other teams are not going to give you exactly what you want for Oladipo between the injury and maybe the contract stuff has something to do with it as well. And if you're the Pacers, at that point, you might just be like, we'll just rather keep him and we'll just see how the next few months go. That being said, if you were Indiana, the idea of getting like a starter, a young player, and a pick, maybe that would be enough to really entice you on Oladipo. And for the case of the Bucks on why they would do it, it's the desperation of being good right now, or better right now, of course. Another thing to point out about a potential Oladipo to the Bucks move, that could make the Bucks pretty expensive, depending on what Oladipo wants in free agency. I mean, hasn't already been said he wants a max contract, even though, he's had the injury stuff, right? Well, Middleton's already got a max. If Giannis stays, then he's getting the max. And if the Bucks would have to give Oladipo what he would want, then that could be most of your cap space just hung up in 3 guys. Now, if that's what it takes to keep Giannis, and you're confident that Oladipo can get back to what he was his first year in Indiana, then it's worth it. Because I think that top 3 would be good enough to think the Bucks can win a title or several titles or whatever. The other way to look at it too, if you're the Bucks, if it was going to be Bledsoe and DiVincenzo, is, look, Bledsoe doesn't give you anything in the playoffs. And DiVincenzo, while I think he's still got room to improve, he was a nice rotation piece for them who also didn't really do much in the playoffs. So even if you made the move and then Oladipo wasn't that good, did you really lose much? I mean, you lost some bodies, so that's rough. But to take on the chances of Oladipo coming back to form for you, you might do it anyway. As far as that being a good enough offer for Oladipo for Indiana's sake, I mean, again, it depends on the guy's market. But I think the other thing that this says, just hearing this news, is that the Bucks are doing something. Because, I mean, after they lost to the Raptors, you could say that their offseason was a negative overall because they lost Brogdon, of course, right? And I think it would be pretty disheartening for a team that is this good to follow up last offseason with doing barely anything this offseason. So at least they're making some calls, that's nice. And I think this opens up the idea of us projecting other players that they could look to acquire. I mean, Chris Paul's been talked about a little bit. We'll see. I think about Schroeder for this team, and I think he'd be a good fit. I think he would give them a lot of what Brogdon gave them, honestly. I guess there's a chance OKC would want to keep Schroeder, but I don't know. I mean, you could argue that the only guy that they definitely want to keep is Shea, and everybody else is expendable. I mean, the Bucks have the money to make it work for Schroeder, whether it's George Hill and Ilyasova, I mean, those two make more than Schroeder does. I think the luxury tax maybe screws up the money a little bit for both teams. I don't know. I imagine OKC would be okay with that if you sent a draft pick of some kind their way. You don't want to just throw out draft picks like it's nothing if you're Milwaukee, but it's also like, if you're going to move some picks, now is pretty much the time to do it. Schroeder has 1 year left, so they'd have to re-sign him after the year. Is there a Buddy Hield trade out there for the Bucks? I don't think so, because I don't think the Kings would want Bledsoe. I could picture them actually wanting Lopez, but I think he's pretty essential to what the Bucks have going on. I guess to stay in OKC, what are the chances of a Gallo sign-and trade? I mean, Gallo has already said that he wants to go to a winning team, and you could say, well, the fit's kind of weird, which I agree with, but we've seen Giannis play center. I don't think it's that insane to just have Gallo out there at small forward with Giannis and Brook Lopez. Middleton can defend two guards, I would imagine. But also, they acquired Mirotic like last year or something, and Gallo and Mirotic are pretty similar players, so I don't know if the Bucks would be super against doing that. And for OKC, it's a similar thing. Give us something, the pick or whatever, and then send like George Hill and Ilyasova over there. And then Gallo gets like a $15-16 million annual contract. So yeah, we'll see what the Bucks do. As far as the Pacers, I mean, I've kind of said this already. There's a case to be made both ways. I mean, if some other team thinks that Oladipo is worth the risk enough to give you something pretty good, then perhaps you jump on it. But there's also reason to think that if you're just going to get pennies for Oladipo, then I don't think it hurts to just go into the season with him and see where you're at. I mean, I'm talking about other teams trading for Oladipo with the chance of him bouncing back. If you're the Pacers, the chance of Oladipo bouncing back might be so valuable for you that you'll take that over the guarantee of maybe some solid players, an okay draft pick, or whatever else from a different team, Because you look at Indiana's situation, and I mean, it's cool. Brogdon's good, TJ's good, Sabonis and Turner are good. Maybe they don't fit together great. But Oladipo is their one chance at having a top, 15 player or something. I mean, the guy was, all second team or whatever that one season, so yeah, you got to be pretty confident that he's not going to be that guy anymore if you're going to want to move him. So that's that. Whether this move happens or not, I think the fact that it was reported, it just says some interesting things about both teams and that whole spiel. So, yeah.